Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 160 of the Wise Guy Sports Show here in the Wise Guys YouTube channel. I am one of your hosts. I am the Big Rican on Sports, Mike Martinez, and with me, as always, is my co-host with the most, the technical, if not sleepy, genius of the show, Mr. JC Blue Note, Jim Cornetti, and James. Happy Wednesday evening as we record this episode, sir. How are you today?
I was telling you it was a bad day at work, logged off, made some waffles for dinner. Within 10 minutes, started watching Command and Conquer Red Alert 3, somebody playing through that old game. If you remember, that's the one that had Jenny McCarthy and Gina Carano, and nobody knew her name, and everyone then fell in love with Gemma Atkinson afterwards as Lieutenant
Yes.
Ava and Tim Curry, and boom, out. And your text 5 minutes before we should have gone on with this, is what woke my ass up.
It's funny because while you were getting everything set up to do this, I sent Steph a TikTok and she goes, "Are you guys not on?" I was like, "I woke him up. Give him a minute." Um,
That never happens.
Dude, I had a moment. Usually, if Bobby wakes me up and either, you know, this morning was 10 minutes after 4, I didn't go back to sleep. Like a week ago, it was 10 minutes after 4. I went back to sleep. Next thing I know, Steph's like, "Oh, babe, it's like 6:30. You kind of need to get up." I was done. I fell back to sleep and was unconscious. Oh, that's the worst.
I
But I
said
tell
the
you what,
hell. I said the hell with it. It's like I already put in for that for the concert at the end of the month. I wanted to have the rest of my vacation like looked at or spoken with my boss. I said the fuck with it after as bad of a day as it was. Just put the damn thing in and deal with it later.
no, I hear that. I'm having much of a moment like that too. I'm trying to decide when the rest of my time off is going to be taken because I'm actually taking it this year. Who knew? I know,
Who are you?
right?
Who are you, and what have you done with my co-host?
Truth be
Next,
told,
next thing you're gonna tell me that you're okay with who the Browns are starting at quarterback in the on Saturday in their preseason opener. You're gonna be a Giants fan. You're gonna be a Yankees fan. You're actually going to cheer for Michigan. Who are you?
I don't have the mental capacity right now to even just eviscerate that argument
Because
because
opposite is opposite.
but we don't have a big show tonight. We can
You
actually
have to
get this
stop the
thing done.
Q-tip when there's resistance.
No, when I saw who the Browns were starting on this weekend in their preseason game, I did the Bob Euchre the Bob Euchre segment that's on the board.
Oh shit.
That's the
You
one.
can you can put it on the board.
Do they bless themselves now in Chicago when they score runs though? I mean, honestly, the Pope is a White Sox fan, so is it score a run, do one of these?
I mean, because he's at a pulpa. Come on, let's just get it out of the way.
Yeah, well, no, we can't really do the Pope jokes right now. I squeeze your face.
I crush your head.
Oh, you know we're old when the Kids in the Hall reference makes an appearance within the first 5 minutes of the episode. So, Jim, we had a big weekend in pro football, and I know we're just getting into where pro football is going to be our big part of our show for the year, but it was a very, very festive weekend in the home of the Hall of Fame of professional football. In Canton, Ohio, this past weekend, the gold jackets were handed out. The five legends from the modern era include Drew Brees, Larry Fitzgerald, Luke Kuechly, and Adam Vinatieri, alongside the senior committee inductee Roger Craig. Um, a I would say, a very well-deserving class this year. Not anybody
Yes.
you could really question. Kuechly may not have been in the league for forever, but he was a gold jacket whenever he stepped on the field when he was there. Roger Craig, I think, is long overdue
Yeah.
for his
But
contributions to the San
I mean,
Francisco dynasty of the 80s.
Right. We'll talk about this as we go. Kuechly was kind of like the defensive version of like a Terrell Davis, is that he wasn't there that long, but he had a massive impact when he was. Roger Craig, you're completely right, long overdue. But as a Clevelander, I'm going to make the argument for the fact that Roger Craig did get in, and Clay Matthews has not.
You're absolutely right. Clay Matthews should have been in several years ago. I know we talked on the show when they put him into the Browns.
Ring of Honor, because I
Is
was
it
at that
Ring
game.
of
Yeah.
Honor? Yeah, that they were gonna. The next thing was gonna be a gold jacket to go with that. A lot of people thought when Keith Hernandez got his number retired by the Mets in 2024, no, I'm sorry, 2022, that the next step would be Cooperstown. The quote unquote Veterans Committee would come calling for the greatest defensive first baseman. Unfortunately, like Keith Hernandez, Clay Matthews still has not gotten that knock on the door from Canton. But let's talk about the other modern guys. And we're talking about three guys you could honestly have the conversation of being the best at their position for a 10 to 15-year period for each one of them. Um, I want to leave the kicker for last and give him his flowers last because no one ever does that. And I want to start with the guy in the middle there, the first three. And that is, of course, maybe the craziest stat in NFL history. Larry Fitzgerald, of course, started as a ball boy with the Minnesota Vikings back in the day. Those are the Vikings of Chris Carter and Randy Moss that he was a ball boy for. And then, of course, Dennis Green, the head coach there, is the one who drafts him at number 3 overall. But much like the Tony Gwynn, who has more assists in college than he did strikeouts in the major leagues, Larry Fitzgerald has more tackles than he does drop passes in the NFL. That's James. That's an unreal stat. That's absolute. It's insanity. I can't even. That's amazing.
I'll give you a stat that's even more outstanding.
Ooh,
Larry Fitzgerald never officially retired. He never signed his paperwork and just quietly drifted off into the sunset. Larry Fitzgerald, there was an article about this earlier this week. He never officially retired. He's 42. He's not coming back, but
no, I know he's not coming back. You know what the funny thing is, and the thing that no one talks about with Larry Fitzgerald is his connection to Maurice Claret and how that quietly went away with him. Because if you remember correctly, Claret and Fitz both tried to get into the NFL before they'd been out of high school for 3 years.
yes,
Claret, of course, his life took the downturn into what turned into his issues, which are well publicized, obviously, in Ohio, him being from Youngstown and whatnot. But no one really faulted Fitzgerald for wanting to do it. He just quietly went back, played his second year at Pitt, and then went to be drafted number 3 overall. Because if I remember correctly, Fitz went to a year of prep school after high school before he went and played at Pitt. So
correct.
there's the 3 years from graduation. But listen, he's is he the best player in Arizona Cardinals history? I would think so.
I mean, you can't really quote Kurt Warner in there because he was there for a cup of coffee, although he did have the most success with them.
Definitely. And of course, Fitz was a big part of that, um, along with Anquan Bolden with that team that got to that Super Bowl against the Squealers. Um, Honestly, should have won that Super Bowl. They had too many. If they had a defense that could make a stop, we're talking about an Arizona Cardinals Super Bowl championship.
I will die on the hill, and I brought it up on this show before. Santonio Holmes did not catch that pass. One foot was on top of the other. He did not get 2 feet down.
No, I don't think he. And as big of a Buckeye homer as I am, you obviously know that. And Santonio Holmes, one of my favorite Buckeyes of all time. No, he didn't. I don't think he made that catch either. Um, Now the one against New England when he was with the Jets, of course he made that one. Um, but listen, Larry Fitz, there haven't been many first ballot Hall of Fame wide receivers. Um, his mentor, of course, Randy Moss, is maybe arguably the greatest receiver in the history of the game. He's in the conversation with Jerry Rice. Of course, Jerry Rice still has the nod at this moment. Chris Carter, who also was on that Minnesota Vikings team with Randy Moss, who mentored both Randy and uh, and Larry Fitz caught some strays from Fitzgerald in his speech. Gave him his flowers and said, Uncle Chris, I've always had the best hands. And Carter, being who he is, just laughed the whole thing off uh, with him. So it was cool to see Larry Fitz going, because these are guys now that we followed as, late teen, young adult into adulthood, that we really dissected as fans of the game to get in. Of course, then you have Drew Brees, probably actually, no, not even probably, in my opinion, the best quarterback to come out of the Big Ten in history. Uh, Set all the records at Purdue, goes to the Chargers, has a couple of great years, and that devastating shoulder injury. He could have been, if the Dolphins sign him, does Nick Saban ever go to Alabama?
That's a very, very good point because you figure if he stays in San Diego back then, he's got LaDainian. That's a great team, just always running right up against the wall because of the fact that he was playing in the same conference with, Peyton and Brady. And then he goes to New Orleans, helps resurrect that franchise. Um, he's got that great defense. They get their Super Bowl win right after Katrina and everything, and sets all kinds of records. Some which that will still stand to this day. Played everything the right way. Has become a very, very good broadcaster afterwards,
Yes.
which a lot of those guys typically don't do. Um, he's entertaining. He's funny. He's the shortest guy on the set by a country mile. It doesn't make a difference.
It doesn't.
And
And
he
not for
and
nothing.
not for nothing is arguably the star of one of if not the best This Is Sports Center commercials in history.
It's too wide. I can't
I
back up.
can't back up. Go around.
Not to rub salt in a wound for you, but he's also could have had two Super Bowl rings had we not had the most egregious missed pass interference call in the history of the NFL.
Yeah, but we ended up losing that Super Bowl, so I could care less. Because also
That's
remember,
true.
because that's where they stripped out all the colors before before redesigning and everything. So it was basically like throwing back to the Merlin Olsen, fearsome foursome days. So it's like I didn't
That's
have
right.
too much of an even though I was a Rams fan and I was happy for that. It's like the only it was monochrome at that point.
It was also, as you put it very vividly, the most boring Super Bowl in the history of the game.
Everyone has actually voted it. I mean, every time years come out and they say, "Where do you rank this one?" That one's it's yeah. I'll play the sound bite, and it's going to be a little distasteful for the fact that we're actually given flowers here, but um,
Quite frankly, I'm a worthless fucking fat ass who shits his pants.
it's the Trump of Super Bowls. It may be the worst, and a lot of people actually will rank it near the bottom or basically in the bottom three.
And the people you don't really like are the ones that like it because they were Patriots fans.
Right.
Yeah.
All 12 bandwagon of them anymore.
They're back up to 15 after last year. But Jim, I have to tell you, all the love he showed New Orleans in his speech and all the great moments that Drew Brees had in his speech were amazing. I have not seen highlights of Luke Kuechly or Roger Craig's. I haven't. I watched Larry Fitz's. I watched Drew Brees. But the guy who stole the show was Adam Vinatieri.
Just like he stole a Super Bowl.
Three of them. Remember, they won all three of those first Super Bowls in New England by a field goal. Two of them to walk it off, one against your Rams, one against the Carolina Panthers. That third one against the Philadelphia Eagles, he kicks a late field goal to give them the lead, and that's the final score. Difference is 3 points. But dude, Vinny was hilarious. the
It
Pat
was
McAfee line,
yeah,
notwithstanding
it was low-hanging fruit, but it was good. It was very, very low-hanging fruit.
the Bill Belichick line was even better.
He
I
was saying the
mean,
quiet part out loud to a larger audience. These are jokes.
he
We got to be honest. These are jokes that everyone's told before. He's just basically using it to get a laugh. I'm not going to fault the guy for it. You
no,
know, but again, it was the delivery wasn't there. He probably had some other people writing it for him. You could definitely tell like he was struggling through a couple of those. It was very low hanging fruit, but for all the guys that want to be serious, you know, a kicker who, let's be honest, like if he didn't actually, if he wasn't playing at the same time, Mike Vanderjagt would actually be having his blazer.
very true. Um, a lot of people who have talked about, you see in different social media platforms, you see in different podcasts, Vinny's in the Hall of Fame. Most of them preferred the Peyton's forehead as the teleprompter, to be honest with you, to the Pat McAfee is the likes to hold his balls as much as his wife does. Um, the thing that you heard from a lot of people that I saw, at least on X and whatnot, perusing over the weekend, was that kickers, when Vinatieri goes in or Morton Anderson went in, really start to get some shine put on them. And the name they always bring up, Jim, is a sore spot for you, and that's Scott Norwood.
Well, I wasn't a
Scott
Bills
Nor
fan back then, but I mean, I've
No,
actually
but
really only kind of become a Bills fan in the last maybe 15 years.
yeah, but it's the stigma more that they're talking about. Scott
Yeah.
Norwood missed by that much, and it's Scott Norwood. It's wide right. Vinny, of course, hits one of the most controversial kicks in NFL history in the Tuck Rule game against the Raiders, and then you have the kicks in the Super Bowl that were just bombs. He nailed those. Um, and you think about it, when the kicker or the specialist goes in, a la Devin Hester, was it 2 years ago or last year Hester got in?
I want to say it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, you start thinking about the guys who do those things and how important they are to an NFL or even any kind of football roster on the professional level. As I was watching Grey Cup highlights the other day, CFL's playing, so that's always fun. But
Yeah, I've been watching a lot of CFL highlight compilations lately.
yeah,
I thoroughly enjoy a lot of CFL football.
I do too. You know what I watched the other night? A full game of the Women's Baseball League.
Very nice.
That catcher from New York is a beast. Can she hit for the Mets anyway? Um, but just to kind of wrap up the gold jacket thing, Jim, as we sit here going into the season, we are getting the final year of a first ballot Hall of Famer in Pittsburgh. Of course, when you in your bust, you don't have a hat on like you do in the Major League Baseball one. Um, but you have another Packer quarterback who's going to go in a few years when his time comes in Aaron Rodgers. Honestly, I think you have another gold jacket guy in LA with Myles Garrett who will go in. Maybe a teammate of his is going to put the stop on his clock if Aaron Donald decides to come back. Is there any other players right now that you think are destined for a weekend in Canton that we are watching currently?
I got to say Matthew Stafford. Even
Okay.
though a lot of people have actually said with his recent success in LA, but remember he was an all pro. He was a damn good quarterback. A lot of those years in Detroit. Um, we got to think Travis Kelsey. Um, Mahomes has still got some time left, but Travis is coming down right down to the end. Um, Even though he's going to miss significant time this year, I got to think Laramie Tunsil with Washington is going to be first ballot. Um,
That's a good pick too. What
I think
about
I
what
think it was
about the
just reported earlier this week he's gonna miss, like, upwards of 4 months with surgery. I think he tore his bicep in training camp this week.
yeah, it was a torn bicep muscle. What about the Jordan Mailata, the offensive tackle, the former rugby player for the Eagles? Is somebody like him you think would have a case for it?
I think he would, but we've gotta actually see him kinda sustain it maybe another year or 2.
Okay, fair enough.
With Philadelphia being as successful as they are, he's definitely gonna be able to make a case because you gotta figure as much the fact that they got kinda 2 Super Bowls out of it, Jason's gonna go in. Um, uh, very, very possibly, he may not be first ballot. He's definitely going to be up there. Um, yeah, there's not a whole lot of them out there, you'd have to think. I mean, we're definitely watching some guys now that if they keep on that progression, that they're going to be there, but it's definitely something you've gotta scratch your head about a little bit. I mean, when you look at if we just look at quarterbacks from last year, Stafford, absolutely. Goff, probably not. Dak, no. Drake May, no. Sam Darnold, no. I mean, there's really nobody on this list. I mean, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes might be the only other starting quarterbacks not named Aaron Rodgers that could make that case right now. Um, and you gotta think that unless they eventually break through in the next 2 years with that window rapidly closing, that Josh Allen's gonna have a very Fran Tarkenton, Dan Marino type career. He's gonna put up all those numbers, all those records, and never have the one thing that basically is gonna give him carte blanche.
Yeah, and that would be very sad. I mean, we've talked about the list of players that we thought, you know, deserved a championship is the wrong way to put it, but that's really what we've talked about before. And you throw names out like Marino and Tarkenton and Griffey and from all
Warren
the different
Moon and
sports,
yeah.
Warren Moon, Randy Moss.
I mean, a couple others that I could probably throw out there. Um, Jonathan Taylor, I think, has made actually a good case. Let's see him keep it up for a couple more years. Derrick Henry, I think, has got to go in first ballot. Saquon Barkley is going to be a first ballot. If we're just looking at you know rushing, when you look at receiving, you've got so many great names out there, but we've got to be able to see them keep this up. JSN is going into year 3. Puka Nakua has only burst on the scene recently. Jamar Chase has been there, but we got to see him be able to keep that up, especially with the flux that Cincinnati's going to have at quarterback in the next couple of years. Trey McBride, Zay Flowers, Chris Olave, who just got a really nice payout, Nico Collins. But the thing is again, CD Lamb's another one. CD Lamb, I think, might be able to make the closest case to it because he had really poor quarterback play in LA for a lot of years, put up a lot of really good numbers, goes to Dallas, has an all-pro type quarterback in Dak Prescott, keeps putting those numbers, but has no postseason success to be able to back up and add to that resume.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to quantify a few players that I was thinking of, Stafford and Rogers, absolutely. Um, Travis, I think Travis is a no brainer to get into the Hall of Fame. Um, whereas Laramie Tunsil, I think, is a good pick. I think his injury history has not helped him with that endeavor. Miles Garrett is a first ballot Hall of Famer because all he's going to do is keep getting better.
Right.
I tell you what, I think we're seeing a couple of coaches right now who are going to end up in the Hall of Fame. And highlighting that list, by the way, obviously is Andy Reid. I'm going to go out on a limb and say Sean McVay. And possibly we get one who just stepped off the sideline and Mike Tomlin. I think Mike Tomlin's a first ballot Hall of Famer, everything he did in Pittsburgh every year.
You can't really argue that. I mean, people are going to say he's got the one Super Bowl, but he's also, he went 10 years without winning another playoff game. And there's a lot of people that are actually going to put the knock on him that, yeah, he won during the regular season. He couldn't do shit in the playoffs. And the one Super Bowl and the one time he did have success in the playoffs, it was with Cowher's regime. So it was basically like putting, you know, um, it was the Urban Meyer thing when he wanted Ohio State. Well, yeah, he did it, but actually there was a lot of people that saying he did it with Tressel's the back end of Tressel's recruiting class. You get that really anywhere you go, though. But I mean, you got to think, you might be able to put John Harbaugh in that conversation. Pete Carroll's definitely going to be in there because at least Pete Carroll's got one. He's been to another one. Should have had another one if he would have actually not tried to be the smartest guy in the room. Um, Kyle Shanahan, I think, has actually got a case that he could be able to make, even though he hasn't broken through. He's gotten there 3 times. He's been coordinator for other teams.
Yeah, I think the one other thing I would say as far as the Mike Tomlin case goes is Mike Tomlin won a lot of games. And yeah, most of them are regular season. He does have he has 2 Super Bowl appearances, 1 win. Um, but in your comparison with Tomlin, not Tomlin, and with Urban and Tressel, I think the more apt comparison for the NFL is George Seifert with Bill Walsh.
Yeah, very good point. But also remember, Seifert not only won, but he also went out and won another one.
Did
I
Seifert win one? Not in
I could have
in San
sworn
Francisco?
Seifert's got 2.
No. Or was Seifert the coach in Carol? No. Seifert was the coach in Carolina when Carolina and
He's
Jackson
Seifert's got 2.
as a head coach.
Yes.
He was the head coach for Steve Young's.
He
And
got one in Super Bowl 24 where they beat where they ran it up on Denver 55-10,
55 to
and then
10.
he won again in 29 where they ran it up on San Diego.
Okay, that's what I thought. Seifert has 2. But again, that was Bill Walsh's offense and Bill Walsh's team. The first one, the second one really was a Seifert team. I mean, that was the Steve Young, Ricky Waters, yes, Jerry Rice, Deion Sanders, San Francisco 49ers that won that game that big. So Hall of
The
Fame weekend is
only
always fun.
I would say I'm actually the more I'm looking at his Wikipedia profile and his resume, I'm a little surprised George Seifert isn't in there already because remember he also won 3 as an assistant on Bill Walsh's staff, so he's got 5 rings, 2 as a head coach. But it's almost a wonder of detracting because of who he had with that. He only won 114 games in the league, but he's still got nearly a 650 winning percentage, 10-5 in his career in the postseason. That's a 667 winning percentage. And oh, yeah, we just mentioned 5 Super Bowl rings to his credit.
Yeah, being Walsh's coordinator and then, of course, Bill Walsh's successor with that. But Jim, Hall of Fame weekend's always fun. I mean, to see you get the Hall of Fame game, which is really the kickoff of preseason football, which we will come to in the next couple weeks with our NFL and college football preview special, which will be one show with nothing but football wall to wall, probably the translator.
And we had a very entertaining Hall of Fame game from everything that I
We
heard,
did.
even though the ending of it resulted in a quarterback who's going to vie for a roster spot, basically now going to miss some time with Haynes King basically busting up his shoulder on the final play of the game.
Yeah, and that was a great play by him too. That was gutsy, especially when you're trying to get on a roster. But Jim, Hall of Fame is over. It's the last induction of the season, and hats off to the Gold Jacket class.
Mike, everyone's talking about it. I wrote a blog about it. Regardless of what side of the argument that you're on, what came out of it, we're going to get into it. We kind of have to.
Yeah, I think we do.
And you honestly think we weren't going to discuss this at some point on this. Dejanay Carrington basically clotheslined Sophie Cunningham in the face, gets tossed, and I don't know what was more shocking, Mike, the fact that she actually had the gall to sit there with everyone looking up at the screen, and even people in her home team's building in Chicago there applauding it because they're Indiana fans and they're paying there to see Clark because Chicago's in the shitter this year. And Indiana's contending for a top 4 spot in the WNBA playoffs with under 15 games to go for everybody at the time. Um, or what it turned into about less than 10 minutes later after she got her hands on her phone in the locker room.
Yeah, it's pretty sad. And it's to the point where it's pretty sad that my wife is sending us stuff about this on Messenger and to me on TikTok. I will say this. Yes, you and I were going to talk about this. I have very rarely seen it, podcast web show like what we do, that is two guys that talk about women's sports as much as we do. I just don't see it much. We are both WNBA fans. We are beyond excited for the Cleveland Sirens coming in a couple years. So when I saw and I hadn't seen the foul until shortly after I read the blog, by the way, which again, my friend, phenomenal job.
I could have gone longer. I actually had to trim that down to about 950 words because as I'm writing it and everything else I'm putting into it, it's like shit. I'm like it's almost 1,500 words. I definitely don't want to go that long. This thing's taken on a life of its own because of everything that was coming out.
Exactly. And let's just go over the play. Sophie Cunningham on a breakaway goes up for a layup, and Dejanay Carrington comes out of nowhere and basically does the best Draymond Green impersonation that I personally have ever fucking seen. Jim, here's the thing about this, and let's not speak on the racial stuff right now. Let's speak on the court for now. This is not the first time she's targeted the Indiana Fever. Very
Correct.
famously, last year, the shot was at Caitlin Clark. Sophie Cunningham is the enforcer on that team.
Much like Dejanay Carrington is now the enforcer of the Chicago Sky, like she was with the Dallas Wings last year.
There's a difference between enforcer and goon, dude.
Yeah, big difference. And let's keep in mind here, Dejanay Carrington was a former WNBA all defensive first team, but she's also bounced around the league for the last couple of years, not being able to really kind of get things to stick. I don't know. I can't remember if it was like injury history or just, whatever. But this is not the first time she's done this. You just mentioned that she hard fouled Mabrina Mabry last year, who's having a phenomenal year with the expansion Toronto Tempo this year. Remember, she was the one that put up the WNBA career record tying 53 points in a game earlier this
That's
season.
right.
So and I'm a big Mabrina Mabry fan. I might be a bigger Mabry fan than I am a Caitlin fan. She because she clocked Mabry from behind, and then on the way down, kind of like you could see that she almost kind of reached like she was going to either try to pull her hair, but definitely like Mabry's head's going back because she's like, as Carrington's reaching for the block, she's also making contact with the top of Mabry's head. Mabry falls and lands on Paige Becker's, um, with her phenomenal rookie season last year. And then with this play, it wasn't a basketball play at all, because if you go
No.
back, you watch the play, it was a steal. It was a loose ball turnover. Carrington basically is the one that makes the deflection and then receives the outlet pass. She's got the ball in her right hand as she's a right-handed shot. And for Carrington to make that block, she's got to not only close the distance, but come across Cunningham's body and is not going to jump out of the gym like LeBron would do on Iguodala, in Oakland here. She's not going to make that block. So she basically does just enough to make it look like a basketball play. But then when you look at it, Rebecca Lobo and Ryan Rocco on the ESPN broadcast, when it came down, they both knew that this should be a flagrant, and then it took literally about 10 seconds afterwards, and I want to say the second angle that they showed, Rebecca Lobo's already calling for Carrington to be tossed out of the game. It was blatantly obvious that she basically clotheslined her.
Yeah, this was a thug move. And again, Bill Lane Beer used to make thug moves in the NBA. It doesn't matter what the color is. This was a thug move. This was an absolutely non-basketball play. This was an aggressive move. This was to, and I'll be honest with you, this I think was to injure. This was not to stop someone from scoring. This was to injure. And I don't care if you're NBA, WNBA, NHL, PWHL, Major League Baseball, the new women's league they got going on. If you're playing arena football, if you are intent to injure, you have no place in professional sports. None whatsoever. I feel I was a pitcher. I feel pitchers need to pitch inside. Guys are going to get hit. If you're throwing at dudes' heads, you need to go. If you're aiming for knees on the football field, you need to go. If you're trying to knock somebody down like this in a basketball game, you need to go. If you're putting dudes in the boards without them looking or into the poles in between the benches in the NHL, you need to go. This was not a basketball play. The play last year when she took Caitlin out was not a basketball play. The play when she hurt Mabry last year was not a basketball play. My biggest issue with this is a person who has the talent to be an all defensive player in the league has now turned into nothing more than a fucking street thug. And on top of that, she's terrible.
Yeah, I'm not going to deny that premise here because of when she knocked down Mabry, what really irked my ire last year was the fact that she got up and had one of these looks. Motionless, blank. Didn't do anything. Basically like, yup, bitch, I knocked you down. What are you going to do about it? Kind of look.
Okay.
I understand trying to be aggressive and forceful. When she did that, and then thank God for Michaela Timpson pulling Sophie away before punches got thrown, because then Carrington would have basically been knocked in the next week. We know about Sophie's black belt background. We know she's more than capable of handling herself. And anyone who's actually saying, you know, we'll definitely dive into the racial aspect of this here in just a second with the social media that came out, and they're calling the double standard. Well, why didn't Sophie get a technical? Quite honestly, there's a possibility, you have to think about it, that Sophie should have gotten a technical, because also if you look at it earlier in the game, Caitlin got teed up for making contact with an official when she was actually losing her balance out of bounds, and the NBA quickly rescinded that tech. The WNBA rescinded that tech within like an hour of the game finishing. Sophie could have potentially gotten teed up because she did kind of, shove Carrington back on the way. But remember, when Sophie wrapped up, I'm trying to remember who it was now. I remember the play where she wrapped her up last year when it was against Phoenix and threw her to the floor. Sophie got tossed out of that game. Sophie's been tossed out of games before. Carrington, it was as egregious and dirty and uncalled for and about as blatant as you can get of a non-basketball hard foul play as you can make. And the fact that she's sitting there amazed that it got upgraded to a flagrant 2. There was follow through. There was even if it didn't look like it was intent, like the only thing that would have made it worse is if when she went to make the swipe, her hand was in a closed fist and it looks like she was trying to go Nikita Koloff Russian sickle with the actual clotheslining motion.
It's funny you mentioned the Nikita Koloff Russian sickle, because when you said the blank look, I was going to say, okay, blank look as in Draymond kicking Steven Adams in the balls, or Bubba Ray Dudley putting Mae Young through a table.
Right. I mean, it wasn't trance-like, but she just basically had this. That's literally the look that she had. It was blank. It was basically, yup, I did it. What are you going to do, bitch?
Look, and I understand that and please understand, Everybody's out there listening. I'm not saying this because they're females. I, I'm saying this because I understand that especially in basketball, you need to have a tough, hard nosed defensive player on every team. You have to have it. Every great team that's won a championship has had that hard nosed defensive player. Now, sometimes it's the guy who is the big scorer. Other times it's a guy whose role it is to be the hard nosed defensive player, male or female. Hell, Rebecca Lobo was that person on her UConn teams and with the New York Liberty. Maybe Carol Walters had a little bit more to do with that at UConn,
Yep.
but Rebecca Lobo was definitely a hard nosed defensive player. I think if you go through Gino Auriemma, you kind of have to be a hard nosed defensive player.
Right. And even going back to the Pat Summit teams. Yeah.
Exactly. But there's a hard nosed defensive player, and there's this. They're not the same thing. They will never be the same thing. I mean, you can say what you want about the next part. Let's get into the next part because this is where the real comments really started. Of course, DJ Carrington goes on social media right after that and calls her ejection white privilege.
Right.
So
It was three words to her official Threads account in all capital letters, white privilege, and then tag the Indiana Fever's official Threads account at the end. Three words. Within literally 8 minutes of getting tossed out of the game, she's on her phone.
which again
And
is
to this day,
not
the
a
post is still
professional.
up on her account.
Yeah, it's not coming down.
I
She doesn't
would
have
have
any.
immediately thought that the organization or the league would have said, "Yeah, you need to take that down."
I don't think they will. I don't think they will because it, it's still press. And as bad as that sounds, for a league that has labor strife and everything else going on, it's press. Bad, good, indifferent. It's press. End of story. I think this is someone who is trying to play a card that had nothing to do with it. If you look at, because I'll be honest with you, having now watched the altercation afterwards, yes, Sophie should have gotten a technical for the way she went after her swinging. I agree with that
I mean, it was
100%. I
just a
think
shove. Thankfully,
it's
Timpson actually got in there and wrapped her up and pulled her away. And Stephanie White, the coach of the Fever, kind of actually got in there to be able to kind of get her away before Sophie could throw hands and basically, again, knock Carrington into the end of next week. Carrington would have left that game anyway. It was either through an ejection or a knockout.
yeah, it was she was going out either way. I agree with you. Um, but again, I am in agreement with you on the Sophie should have gotten a tech for that. I agree with you 100%. She should have gotten the technical foul for that. I don't think she did get the technical foul because it's a bad look to give one a flagrant and the other one a technical, especially when the flagrant, it, Jim, it shouldn't have even been called a regular foul on the floor. They should not have had to go to the video for that. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that this woman was trying to hurt the other one. And never mind
And
woman, this player was trying to hurt another player.
And to Sophie's credit, number one, she made the basket. And the
I did see that.
WNBA has a rule like that, that if it occurs on an and one, a flagrant occurs as part of an and one, they get upwards of two shots to make one and retain the ball. So they not only get their 3-point play opportunities. So it's not like, you're just shooting a technical foul. You've still got two flagrant foul shots to be able to just make one to accommodate the 3-point play, and you retain possession. That's a very, very good rule. And
And
Sophie's
it's
a pretty
also a
good
very,
free throw shooter as well.
she is. And it's also a costly role to the team that has the violation. I mean, if you do that in a close game, I don't think it was a close game, if I'm not
It,
mistaken. I think
well,
Indiana was
well,
putting it
Sophie's
on them.
basket basically put Indiana back on top. Indiana started this game on an 8-0 run. And then and here's the most surprising thing about it is Carrington caught fire that she had 8 points in a span of about 2.5 minutes to be able to put Chicago in front. And Sophie's bucket put them over the top. And then basically, you know, Chicago's losing their best scorer, their best player of the first quarter at that point, and never really recovered. Even though they only lost the game, I want to say they lost the game by double digits, but it was still relatively respectable. But I mean, Chicago's got quite a few injuries with this, and then you get Carrington tossed out. Angel Reese isn't there anymore. She gets traded to Atlanta. Um, but
Different
that's the
sky
other.
team.
I mean, that's the other aspect is that there's even though it's not Caitlin versus Angel anymore because of their college days and anymore, and when they were drafted, you know, now we've still got that Chicago and Indiana rivalry, regardless of who's there.
Yeah, and rivalries are good for the sport. You know, we talk about rivalries in all the other professional sports, even in the college sports. It's a good thing, and you really don't have a rivalry in the WNBA that is um, not only good basketball but also good theater. Uh, I think if the Aces, listen, I think if the Liberty could have stayed healthy and you would have got a Liberty Aces final, you would have had a little bit more. I'm sorry. I think the LA Sparks not being a powerhouse and the Liberty being one, that would have been the natural New York LA rivalry.
I'm glad that you brought that up because you would have figured by looking at it on paper and all the storylines that would have come around it, an LA versus Vegas rivalry would have been chef's kiss. But now Kelsey's not there anymore. You
Nope.
know, LA, Vegas, LA is not what they were. They're basically already in rebuilding stage. At this point, they're looking to get another good lottery pick and hopefully be able to compete next year. Um, I mean, quite honestly, the the only major rivalry we've got right now, because of the fact that they're the two most consistent and best teams in the league over the last 3 or 4 years, has basically got to be the 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 Las Vegas Aces and the Minnesota Lynx.
I was going to say Minnesota and Vegas, with, of course, the Liberty winning that title in the middle there, which that's because Brianna and Sabrina's got on a freaking run,
Right.
much like the Knicks got on this year. They became the hot team. Look, this scenario is far from over. I think there's going to be league suspension for DJ Carrington for this, especially with the. They may not make her take it down, but I think this will cause league suspension with what she put on social media thereafter. She'll probably get broken off for a game or two. I don't think it's going to be anything long.
Right.
Um, and Chicago season's over anyway. But this will carry over into next year, whatever team she may be on. I don't know where it's going to land, but we have not heard the last of this player and this player she hard fouled. We haven't heard the end of this yet.
Can we also talk about the one other elephant in the room before we kind of move off the segment here?
Sure.
It can't be lost on anybody that Carrington made this foul against Sophie, and Sophie was at the front of a lot of the conversation because of there's people that call her MAGA Barbie, but it's also that she went on her podcast and brought up the transgender thing again about, the possible, where WNBA is now talking about, you know, putting together a task force of things like that. Can it happen? Would it happen? The current players are probably not going to allow it. They're going to highly speak out about that, which certainly not fair to transgender athletes, but you could definitely see both sides of the coin as at the fact that they're not that they weren't born biological female, so they've got a little bit of an advantage already. Just with their gene makeup, and the fact that those comments were ramping up a little bit, and then now Sophie, as the conversation starts to die down, then becomes the victim of another piece of very egregious, media coverage. She's on the receiving end of this.
Yeah, I don't think they went into Carrington's mind when she made the foul. I understand the angle, definitely the angle from the media on this, 100%. Um, I thought we put the transgender thing to bed in the WNBA with Joanna, man, but I guess I'm wrong.
I mean, and then you get these idiots like Enos Cantor who's saying he's going to declare for the WNBA draft. It's like publicity stunt. It's like no different than like, um like Mike Lindell running for governor and losing miserably, or in Minnesota and everything, and it's like it's all a pub grab, and then basically crying foul when you come up short.
I think Enos Cantor wouldn't declare for the WNBA because there are women in that league who would school him left, right, and center.
Not going to argue with that. I mean, this is definitely not going away, especially where Carrington came out with comments a couple of days ago where she took to X and said that she never once claimed that the assessment of the foul was white privilege. Well, why make the statement? If you're going to
Yeah,
make the
that's
statement, why did you tag the fever in the statement?
yeah,
I
just
get
own it.
I Mike, I get that the two most marketable players the WNBA has, not necessarily the best, but we have to be honest. We have to be honest. The two most
Yes.
marketable players in the WNBA right now are Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham, white females who play on the same team, and marketable for totally different reasons. Caitlin because of what she did in college, Sophie for her looks and her attitude and everything. We can, Asia Wilson, um, Aaliyah Boston, Paige Beckers. There's a lot of great, great talent. Nafisa Collier, Kelsey Plum. Now, granted, a lot of those players I just
Uh,
mentioned, are white of descent. There are great players, but again, it's all about the marketability. I can understand for about a half a second why she would use those two words, but in hindsight, you've this is several days old. Wouldn't you actually come out and, number one, have made this apology sooner, and number two, sat back, decompressed, and then made a statement about it, and maybe clarified your comments or taken it down, or posted kind of like a follow-up post explaining your actions? And that's the problem that I have here with Carrington, is it's a malicious act. She runs and cries foul and has no remorse for the act or the aftermath.
yeah, I think the way that it should have been handled by the team now was, hey, take it down. We can explain this away. It was the heat of the moment. You were angry. And there is not a person on the planet who hasn't said something they didn't mean when they were angry in the heat of the moment. You get that. But when you let it linger like this, that's the problem. And that is the problem that they will have going forward. No matter what the situation is, it's always going to be, this is what you said. You didn't own, and you owned it. So now you got to own whatever happens thereafter.
Hey, in case you haven't noticed, and judging by the attendance, you haven't.
So, Mike, we're gonna kind of bring a little bit of levity here after that last segment here. We've got a
Please
very
do.
short last segment, and it's kind of focused a lot about basketball, and it's all the stuff that's going on off the field as opposed to on it here. Um, Russell Westbrook retired finally today after 18 seasons.
I tell you what, this is a guy who was the first to average a triple double since Oscar Robertson. He won an MVP that season. Probably should have won it the next year instead of James Harden when he did it again. Um, Look, he got to a finals with that OKC team in 2013, 2012, 2012. With that OKC team with him and Harden and Kevin Durant, ultimately losing to the Miami Heat with Bosh Wade and of course LeBron. Um, Maybe the most athletic point guard who didn't get hurt a ton that we've seen in the last 15, 20 years. Because I think Derrick Rose was the most athletic point guard we had seen in that amount of time, but Derrick Rose was constantly injured, unfortunately, and it robbed us of a great player. But I'll tell you what, he is the modern example of the ball hog point guard.
Oh, without question. He's going to be 38 in November. Um, drafted 4th overall out of UCLA by the Supersonics back in 2006. 2017 MVP, 9-time All-Star, 2-time All-Star Game MVP, which doesn't mean anything. But he was also 2-time NBA All First Team, 5-time All NBA Second Team, 2-time NBA All Third Team. He was the part of the rookie first team in 2009, 2-time scoring champion, 3-time assist leader. He was part of the NBA 75th team. He was also a Pac-10 Defensive Player of the Year. He won gold with the 2012 team in London, playing for Team USA. He won a gold medal with the World Championships on the 2010 team in Turkey. Um, Definitely Hall of Fame level career, but it's always going to be thought of. I personally think his last few years just basically being the hired gun in the commando, trying to gravy train his way to a ring and basically realizing that, yeah, you're not an OKC anymore, pal. It's there's one ball, only one guy can have it, and you're not that guy anymore.
No, and I think it's to be known that he really started looking for that ring when two things happened in the same year. His former college teammate got a ring, and his running mate left to go chase one.
Right.
I mean, Kevin Love was his running mate at UCLA, gets a ring with the 2016 Cleveland Cavaliers. And then, of course, the next year, Kevin Durant, who was his running mate in Oklahoma City, goes and joins the Golden State Warriors to get his two rings. Um, Maybe still John Cena's best moment. And that was it John Cena or it was Peyton? It was Peyton that made the joke about he didn't think that KD would start for the women's gymnastics team. What do you think, Russell Westbrook? And neither one of
Right.
them wanted to look him in the face.
Yep.
John Cena did the wrestling thing with the, LeBron, you become a good guy. What do? We make another bad guy. And it was Kevin Durant.
Draymond.
No, that was Durant because it was right after Durant signed with the Warriors.
No, it was Draymond because he hadn't
You
signed
sure?
yet because that was the summer that the Cavs won the championship.
Yeah, there was the especially like the week after Durant
He hadn't signed with them yet. Free
I
agency
thought
wasn't
it was
open.
Durant. I thought it was Durant. Okay.
Westbrook also has the NBA record for triple doubles in a career with 209. People also forget this. He not only shattered Oscar Robinson's record, but Nikola Jokic, now that Westbrook's retired, Jokic is only 11 behind at 198.
Holy shit.
Keep this in mind. LeBron James is fifth on the all-time list. He's only got 125.
That tracks. That tracks because for those 4 years in Miami, he didn't need to rebound. He had Bosh. And really, if you think about it, his 4 years in Cleveland after that, he had Tristan Thompson. He didn't need to rebound. And he had Kevin Love, who was a rebound machine. So, I mean, that tracks for LeBron, but still 125 is a crazy number too. And it's insanity.
But the fact
So,
is,
hey,
you
listen.
have to go, but you go from LeBron at 125, Magic's in fourth at 138, and then you jump to Oscar Robertson at 181 with
Jesus.
just that's how, I mean, granted, it was a different era and everything. And I mean, it was the same era where, where Wilt scored all those points, had 100 points in the game, Bill Russell averaging a triple double. I mean, I'm sorry, also averaging a triple double for the entire season at that point. Averaging 40 points a game, and then Jokic coming along in an age where the ball moves around and everybody's got to be a scorer, and he's only 11 behind one of the best point guards in history with the triple double stat. I mean, when you look at that top five, they're all basically guards or small forwards. You've got a true center who's going to break that record possibly this year.
Yeah, I would think most likely this year. And I'll say this: Oscar Robertson also, I think, did that year when Kareem was on that team. So, I mean, to get a triple double with Kareem cleaning the glass on that team, that's impressive too. But hey, hats off to Russ. What a phenomenal career. Hey, listen, man, two of the greatest point guards of all time retired in the same season. with him and Chris. That's a hell of a Hall of Fame class.
Oh yeah, it's we're gonna be in for some really really good classes in the 4, 5, 6 years from now, especially with some of the guys that have been that have retired recently. But we actually stay on the hardwood, and we go from a guy who actually bounced around a few teams, and one of those teams that he played with, Mike, in a very very sudden move that really nobody knew about until maybe the last day or two. The Lakers are being sold for $12.1 billion.
Yeah, they are. And let's just say there's going to be an investigation, or there should be, by the NBA for tampering. If you look at the last name of one of the people that is involved in this, they have ties to the federal government. And shortly after the sale of the Lakers initially, when Jeannie Buss sold the team that her father brought to prominence, um, an investigation was opened into people who were buying the Lakers because someone was outbid. I don't think this sale is going to go through final. I honestly don't. I think it's going to be like the same one. They're going to get to the due diligence phase and something's going to go wrong. And then the original buyer is going to come back through
So
and get this.
the two names that are coming up are former Walt Disney Company CEO Bob Iger and um, father to an alien who's married, father of a guy who's married to a troll in the White House. Um, Josh Kushner, yes,
I don't
that
know if that's
Kushner.
Jared's. I don't know if it's Jared's father or if it's his brother. It's somebody in that family. Again, this was sold months ago. Uh, I want to say this was sold right before LeBron made the decision to go to Philly. The original sale was done, and then all of a sudden something happens. Now it's taken away.
It's his brother.
Now it's his brother. Now steps in Bob Iger, who is a sycophant to the White House and the brother of the son-in-law to the person in that building. I don't think this goes through. First of all, Bob Iger don't need that kind of money from anybody but himself. He's got it. And second of all, I think Adam Silver's got to do something about that.
Yeah, but at least the difference is like him selling. I mean, the Lakers certainly, even though they haven't won a championship in a few years, I mean, bubble aside and everything, and they're going to take a major step back without, LeBron there because, as great as Luca is, he doesn't have a whole lot of supporting cast around him. So it's going to be a few years before we see the Lakers kind of, look to be. I mean, Boston's in a better position to put a little bit more distance with them in that all-time championship race than the
Yeah.
Lakers are of catching the Celtics at this point. Um, but we had to know that they were going to be valued this large. Like if the Yankees ever came up for sale, they're going to be in that 15, maybe $20 billion range. There's very few people who are going to be able to afford this. Bob Iger's definitely got that kind of money kind of lying around. Um, but this is also, I mean, this is actually a good thing for the NBA because at that point his money's going to now kind of filter into that, and the fact that there's a salary cap involved, which means he's not going to be able to spend you know $87 trillion to be able to make sure that the Lakers win the next 16 championships in a row because of how bitter they are against Boston. He's got that Disney Marvel FU kind of money. Um, but it is what it is. We'll see what happens in the coming years. As if the Cowboys ever go up for sale with Jerry
Oh,
Jones, you know, in his older and declining age. Let's see what happens. With I mean, the Canadians have actually been sold, if you can believe it. The Rangers have been sold. Every NHL team's basically sold. There's talk that the Packers are putting together task force to be able to see, can we sustain being publicly traded without any private investors?
yeah. The The landscape is changing very quickly as far as ownership in sports goes. I will say this, and the only sale that I've really paid close attention, obviously, when the Mets were sold by the Wilpons to Steve Cohen, who was a minority owner at the time. Steve Cohen doesn't just own the Mets; he owns the ballpark. Does this ownership group now own the arena as well, or is
That's
that
a
the city of Los Angeles?
that's a good question because I haven't
Because I
delved.
know, because I know if Ballmer sells the Clippers, which God knows with this Kawhi thing he may be forced to, I'm pretty sure they own crypto.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look into that. Um, it doesn't really say it here just because it's. I mean, and keep it also in mind, Bob Iger is 75 years old.
Yeah, yeah. But let's get to that last one because let's just really ruffle the feathers before we go into the translator and have a good time getting out. What the fuck, James?
So the reports come out earlier this week that um first year head coach in Cleveland, Todd Monken, says that according to the schedule in practice, that Shadur Sanders was going to get the reps with the first team. Deshaun Watson was going to get the reps with the second and third team. And then sure enough, they come out for practice and Deshaun Watson gets all the first team reps and then also gets the first team reps the following day. And then they actually said what you do is when you have a quarterback competition like that, you let one guy play the first series or play with the ones in the first preseason game. You let the other one play in the second one, and then basically your third one is basically guys just trying to make the roster. Now that you've gone to 3 preseason games, so Deshaun Watson is going to start for the Browns in their preseason opener against the Chicago Bears on Saturday.
I don't advocate injuries by players. Obviously, that whole segment we did on Miss Carrington, on Sophie says that, but I want somebody to light him up so bad. I want somebody to light him up so bad. And again, this is not because I'm a Shador Sanders fan. I think the kid could be good if he was developed correctly. Um, I can't stand this piece of garbage.
Let's call this exactly what it is. This is Monken. I don't want to say being lame duck right out of the gate here, but he's basically they're trying to squeeze whatever they can because of the fact that they've still got like 110 million that they've owed him, which is the 40 million for this year, and then all the money that they've deferred over the next 3 years with converting it to signing bonus money that they're going to be on the hook for up until 2029. So they're trying to squeeze whatever they can out of this, and we'll talk about this in depth when we because what we're planning on doing is not only doing um an NFL episode I'm sorry, our NFL and college episode. We're thinking of doing right before the start of the season a specialized uh, 30-minute Browns episode just to be able to look at the 2026 Cleveland Browns just on its own. Uh, different intro and everything like that, or whatever, and just Brown centric, and we can really tear into this then. So Watson's going to start this week. Sanders is going to start next week, provided one of these guys don't get hurt in practice or coming out of this first preseason game on Saturday in Chicago. But again, it's squeezing whatever they can out of this and basically trying to see whatever there is. There is no way in hell that they are going to actually try to sign this guy to an extension unless he's an all pro and they're winning 10, 12 games this year. I still am a firm believer with the fact that not only is he not going to be on the roster really after the end of the season because they're not going to resign him, I still have a feeling he's going to be cut by the trade deadline.
It's entirely possible, but I will say this as far as what they're planning on doing, as far as who they're starting. The second preseason game has turned into what the old third preseason game was when all the starters play for a long amount of time. If you give Billy more than one uh, drive, more than one possession in this game, he's going to play one game against half of the ones of the Chicago Bears, and then he's going to play the next one or two possessions against the twos and threes. And of course, if this is what I think it is, and I believe this is a way to stack the deck for Jimmy Haslam to try and save some face. How do you save face, you hillbilly fuck? You traded Miles Garrett and Giannis in the same offseason, you bastard. You're not saving face, Jimmy. You're not.
I agree with that. Although everything that you're hearing with like the comments of the media and everyone who's seen him and everyone in the locker room is in love with Jared Verse coming back in that trade. So
Oh no, listen, that comment was not an indictment on the packages they received for those players. That was more than he had his finger on trading icons of two franchises of Midwestern sports in the same offseason.
this is
That
basically at this point, all that this is right now, this is a dress rehearsal to be able to try and see if this guy can get a job somewhere else as a backup. Because right now, if he goes out there, I mean, this is a guy that's actually thrown like 9 interceptions in 12 practices. I think he like threw 4 interceptions in one practice, like last week or something like that. And he was
yeah,
throwing to the twos or something like that. And then he goes out and he throws 7 touchdowns in red zone drills and like 7-on-7 or 11-on-11 or whatever the hell it was, and puts up like massive numbers. It's like, but this is still a very young, inexperienced team on both sides of the ball, if we got to be honest here. But it's at this point, you know, he's not a starting quarterback in the NFL anymore. Those days are past. He's been too off injured. He quit on one team. He's got too much baggage. He's never played up to anywhere near that contract. He would be no better than a backup on 25 other teams. And the problem is that of those other 7 teams in the league, they've got really, really bad quarterback situations, and he's on one of them.
agreed, agreed. But I just feel like this is a setup, dude. He's gonna do what he did his final year at Houston when he started, inflate stats because the team is shit. All he did was throw the ball because they lost by an average of each game of about 9 points a game. And you're gonna get Shador coming in week 2 against most of the ones who are gonna play a full quarter, if not a full half. And if he struggles, it's old. He's obviously not as good as Watson. Look what Watson's doing.
Here's a telltale sign with this, and maybe we're reading a little too much into this because they're in Chicago, who was good last year, but we're also thinking, let's see what, if the book's still out on Chicago, were they basically like the NFL's version of the Pistons at this point? Let's see what happens. Can they continue that success, especially in that division? But next week is the home preseason opener against the Buffalo Bills. So it's going to be interesting to see what Watson's doing in Chicago, because there's no way in hell you're going to have him start at home, but
No,
against a playoff caliber team of there. And then you've got Shadur, who you may still be thinking is going to be the opening day starter. We hopefully he'll be the home opener starter when things get going against a perennial Super Bowl team. So maybe you're actually, you know, putting Shadur out there against better competition next week, because maybe he is the guy that's won the job and you're trying to see what you can get out of Watson. You don't want the fan blowback at home that first week.
no, I agree, and I hope that's what it is. We had a long talk about this as we wrap up the blast. We had a long talk about this in the offseason, and the one thing I said that the Browns needed to do was actually try and build around a quarterback, as opposed to finding a quarterback who can block for himself, throw for himself, catch for himself, run for himself. And it seemed to me with all the moves in the draft and the corresponding moves made in free agency, and through trades, that Andrew Berry has done just that. He has built a team around a quarterback. The question is that quarterback the piece of trash that puts you in the situation, or is it the kid that everybody passed over because they didn't like his arrogance and his daddy? Again, not a great situation, but nothing untrue from what I said.
Would you shut up and just push the button already?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
It's the YZ Translator on the Wise Guys Sports Show.
I'm forever unclean.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is time once again for the YZ Translator. It is the best segment of the night because it is the last segment of the night. It is that time when James and I give each other names inside and outside of the sports world. And the first thing that pops into our feeble minds is what we tell you on the internet. And as per our conversations each and every week, this being, we're getting very close to, we're pushing 200 episodes now. We're pushing, what, 130 translators?
It's somewhere in there. It's
Ladies and
getting there.
gentlemen, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I give you the Chronicle. Jesus Christ. The fuck? Oh, you know what I heard in my head? Did you ever watch Storage Wars?
Yeah.
Yep. That prick. Speaking of pricks, James,
Okay. Can we not do that right now?
Jack, I really do. I had a customer the other day comes in, and he's bit of a sports nerd like you and I, and listens to all the episodes of that podcast that was just referenced. And I hit that button. He goes, "Where did you find that?" It's like, dude, I have a tech guy. That's where I found it. Speaking of pricks, James, I'm going to have you go a little unfiltered for me on this one. He is not a favorite of mine or yours, especially with some of the things he's been saying recently that have been off the wall. But tonight, James, your name in tonight's Wisey Translator is that pain in the ass that is Cleveland radio host Anthony Lima.
Although he did make a couple of really good points that I about the Guardians season in the last couple of days. Listen, there's every morning show or sports talk host has got to have opposing viewpoints. It doesn't really work if they're agreeing. Mike and I disagree on a lot of stuff here. We take different ends of the coin, especially college football. We with the Cavaliers, Mike, likes to wear rose-colored glasses. I'm a little bit more of a realist, and that's what makes this show work. If there are times where Lima makes a lot of good points and Ken Carmen does not. Carmen makes a lot of good points and Lima does not. I'm going to always side with Carmen because he did not go to Ohio State and he actually doesn't wear those rose-colored glasses a lot of the time like Lima did. But some of the things that he's actually had, in the last couple of weeks, I don't really pay him any mind because of the fact that he's almost kind of chiming in and agreeing with the worst reporter possibly in the NFL, and that's Mary Kay Cabot, who basically, even though Halloween's not here, she's still riding as many poles, brooms, or whatever. And if there's gas around, she's going to light it.
Yes, I agree. I believe the comment I made to you is I believe she has a foldable massage table in her car that she takes to Berea every day.
I don't think it's that bad, but basically, I've never seen. We know about, we know the old joke of having logorrhea, which is diarrhea of the mouth. We know about talking out of both sides of it. We know about talking out of your mouth and your ass. I've never seen someone who's able to do all of that and then still sit on a fence post and then flip a coin and have it land on its side every single time she's got a microphone in front of her.
Yeah. It's sad to hear.
Although when they basically get into their comedic genius points, I'm going to give Lima all the flowers in the world because we don't get Ken Carmen laughing like an absolute idiot and making it for some of the best radio that we'll hear if it's not Lima feeding him.
I laugh at Lima when I hear him actually support moves that the Browns front office makes. I just, yes, I am a homer. Yes, I am a shill for my teams at times, but I'm also able to look you in the face and go, God, these guys suck.
The other
When it,
aspect of that, though, that we don't really take into consideration is, remember, they are the part of the radio home of the Cleveland Browns. So a lot of the times they get some information that we don't. They conduct really good interviews with the players, but yeah, sometimes it almost feels like they're taking a smaller aspect of the story and they're trying to explode it a little bit larger. Naturally, yes, to drum up ratings, and that's what the media does. That's what we're doing, to be able to try to drive up viewership. Everyone does it, but um he can definitely be a little hit or miss on a lot of points. And really the last maybe week or so has not been his defining moments.
no, it's been terrible the last week or two. What you got for me tonight, buddy, to wrap her up?
Michael, we talked about not having defining moments, and possibly things getting dragged down a moment ago. I'm actually going to give somebody all the flowers in the world right now, because realistically, they've been essentially perfect at what they've been doing, and that is the record-setting shortstop for the Oakland Athletics, Jacob Wilson.
When it comes to baseball, there's a four-letter word that I've heard since I was a kid about great players, and that is stud. And Jacob Wilson is a stud. You have talked about the young core in with the Athletics. Let me tell you something. That young core is going to win a title. I honestly believe that they are going to be that good, and he is going to be the one in the forefront of this, getting that job done. He's going to win a batting title at some point in time, and he's good enough to win a Gold Glove. Now, he may not win it in the American League because of Bobby Witt, because Bobby Witt's just up here somewhere. I love watching that kid hit, man. I love watching that kid hit.
So he broke the major league record of 111 games without an error earlier this week, and the streak apparently continued because what they thought was an errant throw by him got turned into a fielder's choice. So the streak is continuing at this point. So 111 games without an error at shortstop, and you think of all the great shortstops that we've ever had in the history of the game. Cal Ripken, Derek Jeter, Ozzie Smith, Bobby Witt right now. And the fact that now this young stud has basically eclipsed them all. He may not be the best defensive shortstop in all of baseball, but he's definitely the most consistent, and that's what you need.
I agree. And I think of the ones that I personally love to watch, going way back, I'm going to throw a name at you, Kevin Elster, to Omar, to Ray Ordonez with the Mets, or even now you brought up Bobby Witt. I'm going to bring Francisco Lindor, who I've watched since he was in Cleveland. Even you have some of the younger kids like Wilson, like Dansby is still a great shortstop to watch play. Um, you know, for him to go that many games, that's an amazing stat. And he can hit.
So, Michael, we're not sure if it's going to be the football episode, but we are getting very, very close. So, episode 161 will be going to the YouTube channel a week from when this is airing on the 15th. On August 26th, we will look a little bit more into the NFL training camp saga. We're going to have the full first week of games for everyone. We've had a couple of preseason games for a few teams, but the full slate kicks off on Saturday. We're inching closer to college football. With some of the stories coming out of fall or late summer practices as they're getting ready, we're coming down to the end in baseball with the lack of disparity that's there. We can almost kind of start to see the light at the end of the tunnel, even though there's 40 games left. You're starting to see who's going to be in the hunt there. So it's a very intriguing time. We've still got we're going to have a lot more WNBA coming up as the playoffs get closer there. But now it's officially, Mike, the doldrums of summer are over because we've got more than two sports to talk about.
Yeah, it's an exciting time sports-wise. Again, you got the beginning of the NFL season, the beginning of college football. You have the playoffs and finals in the WNBA. You have coming up to the greatest month in all of sport for me, which is October. In Major League Baseball, we're 6 weeks away from the end of the baseball season, so it's coming down, man, and it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a lot of content, and we will definitely get that full football preview episode to you guys in the next couple of weeks.
It'll certainly be before Labor Day because I'm going to be on vacation the last week of the month, more than likely here with this. So if it's not next week, it'll certainly be the week after. But for my co-host, Mike Martinez, the Big Rican, I'm JC Bluno. We will see you guys next week.
Take care, guys.